Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, just outside of Chicago in Hammond, Indiana, and I am talking about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, and it really revolves around the idea of living a more reasonable life. If we want to live a reasonable life, that means we're living a life that we don't ask others to change, ask things to be different for us. We don't need things to be different for us. We just need them to be, and we'll show up and be here too. So many of us run around asking for more freedom to be who we want to be because we've been living under the influence of so many other people in our lives. So when we get older, we're just like, just let me be who I want to be, especially like in relationships. I mean, I know I've been in many relationships where people just want me to be different, want me to be something else. It's like, maybe I'll be that thing at some point, but that's not where I am right now. And I definitely want to be able to be who I am right now in order for myself to be as, my computer is shutting down for some reason. So I'm here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, ancient text, once again, written about 600 BCE. And, that means it was written before Jesus, right? So many of the things that Jesus points to are embraced in the Tao as well. I had someone one time come up and say, I'm not afraid to die because Jesus is my savior. And I was just like, oh, that's great. Well, the verse that I was talking about not being afraid to die. And I was like, that can happen even without Jesus. I mean, it was happening 600 years before Jesus, and it was already written about. So that means it was millions of people, probably, however many people were on the planet at that point, we're already embracing some of these concepts and ideas. We think about the Bhagavad Gita, we think about some of these older texts, these ancient texts, and we recognize that so many of these ancient texts are saying things that we have thrown away. I was journaling this morning when I woke up, and I was writing about this idea that we keep looking to the manifestation to solve problems, right? We keep looking to the world around us to solve problems, or to recognize that the problems that are in the world are the ones that we can see within the manifestation. And yet, those are simply just the result of what we expect to see. We have to recognize that our perception, the perceptions that we have in this manifestation, are created well before they ever manifest within us. And so we got to be able to recognize that we have to look at something else if we want change to happen. We can't just look at the manifestation. I was reading an article, or I skimmed an article yesterday that said, bullies make more money. They found that people who are bullies are out there in the world making more money. And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense in the manifestation. The thing is money isn't necessarily a great measuring stick of how fulfilled or how happy your life is. So I'm here to present Tao of the Day. I only got so much time today, so I'm going to go ahead and pick a number. But I want to invite you up to pick a number. I don't get a whole lot of people coming up and picking a number between 1 and 81. The reason we do that is so that we can read a chapter of the Tao together, and then we can go through it together. So if you're listening and you have something going on in your life, you have a decision you need to make, or you have if you just want a different way of attacking a problem or thinking about a thing in your life, I would love for you to step up and pick a number between 1 and 81. This is very much like Oracle deck. You pick a card. You don't know what the text says, but the text is always going to point to something that you need to focus on. So, without anybody stepping up to that, I'm going to go ahead and pick number 39. It is entitled, somebody is. Avis. Is that how you pronounce it? We're going to bring you up. How do I pronounce your name? Avis?
Avis.
Avis Johns, yeah?
That's it. But I go by the name of Fanny.
Fanny. Oh,
Mm.
well, there you go, Fanny. and you're and it sounds like you're in England.
I am. I'm
You
in
are.
London. Yep.
So Fanny, Fanny here in the States and Fanny there mean very different things.
I don't think they do, you know.
Well, it's well, they it's not necessarily a thing that
My
you'd want to be called.
No, indeed. My daughters get really embarrassed.
Yeah. Fanny, it is wonderful to chat with you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. Have you heard Tao of the Day before?
No, this is my
No.
first time.
Okay. Well, what's going on with you these days?
Ah, juggling my 50s, juggling work, juggling new horizons for my children as they leave home and stuff like that. And
Oh.
I think the reason I've joined this group is because I'm thinking about how do I put myself first when I've spent a lifetime putting others first, and that hasn't always been good for my health.
No. How many children?
2.
Well, that's plenty.
It's plenty.
That's plenty. And how's your health currently?
It's all right. I have no illnesses. I can't complain. I think it's more that things aren't in balance. I food wise, I often go for the quick, easy option. I'm not a processed food person, but put a snack in front of me and I might go
Yeah,
for it.
absolutely.
And finding the time to do exercise and do things that are good for my health, not just good for that moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's important to have an eye on tomorrow
Mm,
while being in the moment.
yeah, yeah.
Like, okay, what can I do? But also, what, I talk to a lot, and so you probably don't know me, but I come out of addiction. I got
Mm.
23 years clean and sober, and a big thing that I
Wow,
talk
amazing.
about, thank you, a big thing that I talk about to my clients and things is to remember that, one, you're going to do it until you don't. So like the snacks, right?
Yeah,
They're going to
yeah,
be there and you're going to eat them until you don't. But
yeah,
the one thing that I like to tell people in order to quicken that is to just recognize that you don't like that you're doing it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
different. It's different because you do like the snack. The
yeah,
snack is delicious. It's designed to be delicious. You can't lie to yourself and say, I don't like it, because you do. But you
yeah,
don't like that you're doing it. Now, just because you don't like that you're doing it doesn't mean you need to stop it. Just
yeah.
recognize while you're eating the damn cookie.
Mm,
I
mm,
liked the cookie and I like eating one. The thing is I don't like that I'm eating 4.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Because
That's so
that
true.
question, the answer to that changes moment to moment. Because you
Yeah,
could like that you're doing something right now. Like you could like that you're talking to me, and in 2 minutes, not like that you're talking to me. However, so that can change moment to moment. But recognizing and becoming aware of
yeah,
where that shift is, and then
mm,
also recognizing I'm going to do until I don't. And
mm,
then asking yourself in the moment, is this a moment when I don't?
yeah.
That
And
all
then, but then finding the ability to say, I don't, therefore I'm going to stop.
right. And then and just like adding the awareness over time, because you're going to not like that you do it once, then you're going to not like that you do it 3 times, then you're going to start getting irritated with yourself because you keep doing things you don't like that you're doing.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's actually going, it's not judgment. It's
yeah.
just observation and awareness. So let's
It,
go ahead and pick a number between 1 and 81.
well, I would go for 13.
1, 3. Okay.
Yeah.
So this one is entitled Finding Equality at the Extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through this, and then we're going to go back and we're going to talk a little bit about it. I'll ask you some questions, and then we'll take it line by line. And you should know that my timer is a little wonky, so you're going to get kicked out in 6 minutes, not the 9 like you think you're going to be getting kicked out. So here we go. To succeed and to fail are equally undesirable. creation and destruction are equally present within us. What do I mean by to succeed and to fail are equally undesirable? The more success you have, the more you protect it by hiding failure. The more you associate with failure, the more you embody it.
Mm.
When neither success nor failure is identified as the destination, being becomes the objective. What do I mean by creation and destruction are equally present within us? To have a body and mind with which I identify gets me involved in the manifestation. The manifestation convinces me of my actions, and so naming them, I both create and destroy, neither of which are unique. To see yourself with indifference, you will have faith in all things. To see the world with indifference, you will be able to care for it all. So what came out to you? What popped out to you in that?
I was particularly struck by the idea of the not aiming for the destination, but focusing on the kind of journey part.
Yeah, the not succeeding or failing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and not judging myself by that.
I'm
It's
sure
quite a
as a
hard thing to
mother,
do.
yeah, I'm sure as a mother, you've had experiences where you have saw something as a failure and then weeks later it turned out to be a success. Or saw something as a success and then weeks later it turned out, oh, that wasn't so good.
So many things.
Right? And we don't see this as a continuum. We see life in, the first world as a way of constantly arriving at a destination.
Yeah.
We're always saying, this is where I am. This is where I am. This is, and proving that with your work, with your family life, with even in our bodies. We're like, oh, I'm old now, or oh, I'm exercising, and so I feel good, and then I feel this, and then 2 weeks later, it's all gone off the rails because I started resting my laurels on a destination.
Yeah, so true.
You
It's
know,
so true, but there's something really hard about rejecting yourself as you are right now and creating a vision of somewhere where you want to be, and then enjoying the process of getting there and recognizing the progress.
but once again, I think this is destination driven. You
Yeah.
want to be somewhere. Why do you
Yeah.
want to be anywhere? It's that's the thing. Like you're looking at this from the perspective of, okay, I don't want to think about a destination. Now I want a destination to get to, right? No, this is what this means by to succeed and to fail are equally
Yeah.
undesirable.
Yeah.
There is no success or failure. There is you, and you are perfect. Now, I like to tell people all the time, don't let your definition of perfection rob you of yours.
Yeah.
It is simply an idea that you have and that you're walking around with. And you're constantly measuring that judgment, that definition of perfection against what you got going on in your life. So what it says here at the end is to see yourself with indifference. You will have faith in all things. You'll have faith in your children. You'll have faith in the future. You'll have faith in the work that you do, your coworkers. You'll have faith in the homeless people you pass on the street, that they'll be okay without you having to necessarily help. But if you are inspired to help, you can. There isn't anything wrong with any of that, whether you do or you don't help or hold the hand of somebody, whether it's your child or your coworker. But that's because you have to see yourself with indifference. And when you have a destination, what you're doing is you're seeing yourself on a measuring stick. And you're saying, I'm constantly measuring against something else. Whether that's because of your parents, your partners. I coming from addiction, I talk a lot about this concept of living under the influence. When we're children, we live under the influence of our parents. We can't not. We have no other frame of reference. Now, when we have a frame of reference of the world, usually that was created by our parents. And we
Yeah.
don't have our own. And so we continue to measure ourselves under the influence of our parents, and then the education system, and then our partners, and our peers, and our bosses.
Indifference is a really difficult word, isn't it? Because
It is.
it doesn't say compassion
Nope.
or love.
Now, once again, my timer's wonky. You got 10 seconds. So you're going to drop out. I'm going to ask you to come back up, and then we can finish.
Okay.
Okay, Fanny's on with me, and we're talking about number 13. So yeah, continue indifference.
Yeah, I think I struggle with the idea of indifference. As somebody who's kind of thinking about to how to use kind of self-care, self-love, self-respect to 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 function. The idea of indifference, I'm interested in that, where that fits.
Yeah, well, it's so there are a lot of ways to go about self-care, and I'm gonna talk about this just briefly from the perspective of a third party, okay, and how we look at a third party with indifference, because that can be easier, and then it might be able to inspire some other thoughts for you. So once again, from addiction, we're gonna look at it from this standpoint, because it's really hard to look at indifference in other ways, because our world has so many rules about what's nice to people. We want to be nice, and we want to be, like we want to be kind and stuff. But, most people have pretty harsh kind of ideas about people who are struggling with addiction and stuff. And back in a number of years ago, there was a big push, and you may have heard of it, called tough love.
Mm.
And tough love, the problem with tough love in the world of addiction was that tough came in front of love. Now, the interesting thing about love, about real love, not just the resemblance of love, not just what love looks like, but real love. Real love takes so many shapes and sizes and changes so quickly. Real love. Not the transactional love of our, of our world today. But like when you can really love somebody. And there have been people in your life, I'm sure, that you have had real, deep, meaningful love with. And it's changed. And there have been times where maybe you didn't talk for years, and then you got back together, and it was like never a day didn't go by, and that you would do anything for them, and they would do anything for you. And even though you would do anything for them, saying no to them is easy.
Yeah.
That, with your trust in that love, is so profound that you're indifferent about seeing them, about doing for them, and you know that that love will always be there.
Yeah.
See, when we look at the world as a place of transaction, then we see our lives from a place of transaction. Real love isn't transactional, but it is indifferent. Now, I know that might sound strange because I'm saying it's indifferent, like you don't care. You don't care whether that person loves you back. Because if that person was hurting, they wouldn't be able to love you back, but your love for them is so strong that it doesn't matter. Now, you also love them so much, you're going to let them be who they are. And if who they are is going to hurt you, you are going to stay away from that person, but continue to love them from a distance. That's indifference. That's indifference about their choices, indifference about how they're treating themselves, not indifference about your ability to love them. And so when we look at ourselves, we say, I want to see myself from this space of indifference. We say, I'm eating these cookies, and I'm going to be indifferent to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to love myself anyway.
Mm.
Does that
Mm.
help?
Mm. Yeah, it does. It's a really interesting kind of different view. It's funny because I'm interested to hear you talk about it from the position of addiction, because there, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, there, I think addiction to kind of substances feels quite different in how we judge it in society to how we deal with addiction around food. The
No.
ability to stop eating food
No.
is
Yeah.
impossible.
Right. It is. We
And
have
so,
done ourselves a great disservice of separating addiction. I like to talk about these things in my work as pacifiers because people don't like to look at food as an addiction.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so the thing is drugs and alcohol, substance, sex, all of these things, they start as pacifiers. And
yeah,
then when we remove ourselves, when we put ourselves in the position of escaping with these pacifiers, they can quickly turn into addictions.
yeah,
And I say you can be addicted to exercise. I know people that
yeah,
are addicted to reading. I know people that are addicted to shows and social media and everything that you can escape with. There's people that are even probably addicted to those like Wim Hof cold plunges. Like there's like, oh, I'm gonna go sit in a cold ice bath. I was like, okay, but are you doing that so you can escape other things, or so you can pat yourself on the back? Because if so, those are quickly turning into addictions, probably.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, and
yeah,
so and all of these things need to be dealt with in the same way. And really, for my money, I always help people just add awareness,
yeah,
because when you can add awareness, you go, look, I really don't like that I'm doing this, and it's just like, okay, well, keep doing it until you're sick of it, and then because you can continue using crack as long as you can keep away the thoughts that I hate that I'm doing this. You can say I hate myself, and that'll help you continue to escape. But if you recognize that you hate actually escaping, now you start a different thought process.
mm,
Now you start a thought process that is actually going to make you aware of the fact that, like, you don't like this thing that you keep turning to. And
yeah,
over time, I'm not saying it's going to be quick, but over time, your mind will change your body to step away and be able to step away for longer and longer and longer stretches of time.
mm,
Awareness is an amazing thing, and that's the one thing that I think we don't tap into. That and
mm,
exercise, I don't think, like for depression and for changing of our lives, like
mm-hmm,
exercise and awareness are two things that we can really use a little bit more of. And not to the point that we're, the wonderful thing about awareness is the more aware you are, the more like the more you're thinking too much, the more you like, the more it's like, oh, this is going too far. Okay, well, I'm aware. Exercise can become an addiction as well, but awareness is one of those things that just doubles on itself. And so I don't believe there's a way of doing it too much, because you're aware, and you're aware of when you're doing it too much, and then you'll step away from it.
Is there ever a point where you can get beyond the kind of fixation, where you can actually live with neutrality?
Yeah.
So it's no longer a continual battle.
Yes. However, you have to recognize you have two children. Okay. So you're coming from a different perspective, right? Like, so
Mm,
I'm approaching 50 and I don't have children. This is an experience you'll never have.
No.
Right? However, and so when you have children, your focus, now, yes, you could get there. The problem is you're in the first world, and the first world is dependent on you spending and making money. Your
Mm,
children, the way that you perceive the world is that your children have to make and succeed and all of this stuff. It's not until they go away and they're fine and maybe married, I don't know, like that you'll be able to like sort of actually see yourself without all the baggage that you've picked up throughout your life. All of that baggage that you picked up, your partners, whether you're together or separate, your children, your career, all of those things are currently being looked at from this perspective. Or you're currently looking at them as these sort of milestones and things. There is a point where you can get to there's a point where you could see your life as a continuum. However, you have all of these destinations already in mind and already mapped out. And so
mm,
you're currently under the influence of all those things.
mm,
Right?
mm,
Not only are you under the influence of your parents, whether they're still alive or not, you're also under the influence of being a parent and the identity that goes with that.
mm. I think I'm on the verge of that. My kids are, early 20s and early 30s. So I am on the verge. They
Yes,
are.
you are. Yes, and that's probably a scary moment.
Yeah. Well, it's a big point of reflection of, okay, my my mate, that bit of my life, that job.
Oh, you just got knocked off. Come back up, and I want to hear the rest of this. Okay, we're going to be Fanny back up, and then I love calling you Fanny. That's so fun.
Yeah. No, that point of where am I going now is I'm nearly there. One of them is intending to get married very soon.
Oh, see,
Um,
yeah,
the other one is, spreading her wings now she's graduated university. It is a time where I can say, what now for me? Where do I fit in this picture?
yeah, and I think looking at like, well, what am I under the influence of?
Yeah.
Because like every time we pick up an influence, from the moment we're born into the bosom of our parents, we are asked through punishment and reward, through all sorts of ways, to be something other than we are.
Mm.
We're asked to be something here in the manifestation, and we are so much deeper than that. We're so much more than that. And yet we constantly, especially in the first world, are convinced that it is my productivity, it is my identity, it is my being a parent, it is my being this or that gives me value. And so we pit ourselves up against the world around us and all of that so that we can have value. And the thing is like really seeing that we are valuable intrinsically. That's a hard place to get to. But
Yeah.
that's where this indifference comes in,
Mm.
right? You know, in the Tao Te Ching, it talks a lot about the idea that like you do things before they need to be done. But you can't know cognitively, you can't know intellectually what needs to be done before it needs to be done. You can only know it needs to be done when it's presented to you. But how many times have you in your life did something and then 2 or 3 days later you realize that you did that and that was perfect for what just took place? And I had no idea that I was going to need to do that, but I did it anyway. And it's like, oh, that's how it works. That's how the universe actually works. It's like it has you doing things when you can be, and it says that in here, when neither success nor failure is identified as the destination, being becomes the objective. You get to be in this moment. And everything that you do ends up succeeding because you're not judging it.
Mm.
Because you're not trying to manhandle the universe. Like, you couldn't do that anyway.
Mm.
And this is, again, where that indifference comes in. And then, the last line here, to see the world with indifference, you will be able to care for it all. Because you don't judge it. You don't judge it for being right or wrong, or good or bad. It is what it is, and it's okay. Because I am protected from all this, because I am connected to it all, and I care for it all, and it's not, like, nothing is attacking you, nothing is making you the victim. The world is actually holding you and supporting you as you step into this next stage in your life.
Mm. 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 Mm.
It's these moments of stillness that are so important. It's important to be able to be still with oneself and with others. We often like to fill the time and fill every moment.
Mm. It's so interesting because I'm looking out at my garden.
Mm-hmm.
It's been raining a lot. It's grown a lot. The grass has grown. And actually, this morning I got up and I came downstairs and I thought, oh, I've got to cut the grass and those hedges need cutting back. And actually, I'm sitting here now just looking at the array of green,
Yeah.
the different shades, the lime, the dark green, the pinks, the whites that are popping through with blossom and stuff.
Hmm.
And it's still the same. It still needs cutting down. The grass still needs cutting. But there's something about appreciating it for how it is right now.
Yeah, and that's indifference.
Mm.
Yes, it needs cutting, and you'll cut it when it's time to cut it.
Mm.
It'll get cut, but it is still beautiful right now and
Mm.
valuable. And this is a moment for you. Now, we also have to look at the idea that everything that we look at is a reflection of us. And so you being able to see this and be aware of what you're seeing is a beautiful sort of window into how it's possible to see yourself that way.
Mm.
So sure, you need cutting, you need trimming, you need shaping, you need all of this stuff. But look at how beautiful this is.
Mm. Would be lovely to hold that and continue to hold it and believe it, because the pressures to think otherwise, to dismiss that thought, are so strong.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And we have to remember that your eyes are constantly reminding you of the manifestation of the world, the physical world. And yet the physical world is such a small part of everything. I mean, it looks like it's everything. But when we kind of take in all of the data that we have about the mystical, about the spiritual, about whatever, however you want to kind of, we recognize that the physical world is literally just showing us what we create. And it's showing us ourselves over and over again.
Mm.
And this moment, when you can let go of judgment and see the garden as it is, that's a window into the idea that you can see yourself as you are, without judgment. And even the caveat that you had to add, where it still needs cutting, don't get me wrong. It's like, okay, well, that's the judgment, right? Like, that's still there. It's not going anywhere. You have 50 some odd years of belief in judgment, in measurement, in influence. You're not going to give that up so quickly, because it's going to give you, like, the foundation of your life is built on that. And it's okay that you have that, but the fact that you can be aware of seeing without judgment for a moment, that opens a huge door for you.
There's a balance between seeing without judgment and wanting to make change, because seeing without judgment is not necessarily about acceptance of that state.
Right.
You can see, if I can apply that to myself and apply kind of self-compassion, indifference, if you like, but to want to make change and to have to reject where you are, is it about needing to reject where you are?
No, you not wanting. First off, let's start with the idea that it's impossible to talk about these things, because talking about these things puts us in the framework of having to match words and emotions and deep feelings and the mystical of the world. Wanting anything puts you in a space of judgment. So it's not that you want to change. It's just this moment you want to exercise. You want to go get your haircut. You feel like you are going to be inspired, whether you have a checklist of things to do in order to get something accomplished or not. You are going to be inspired. Just like that story we talked about a second ago, where it's like, oh, 2 days ago you did something that prepared you for something you didn't know was going to come.
Yeah.
You're being held. And time, even though you're going through it in a linear fashion, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way that it can be experienced. Now, there's going to be a lot of faith and a lot of stuff. You are currently, please come back up, you just got dropped down. You are currently in a space where the belief of the world around you is so strong that it is, that it's overpowering. It's overwhelming. And you want to get to another place. And the reason you want to get there is because you know that that's going to be beautiful. Well, it's not going to be that easy. It's going to be like you have to start here. See your garden, and then in 6 minutes get upset that you have to cut the garden. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That is part of the journey. That is actually part of Tao. It is part of Tao to be unsatisfied or dissatisfied, and then recognize, why am I dissatisfied about this garden now? I'm dissatisfied about it because it's going to be so much work. And then you recognize that, wait, if everything I look at is a reflection of me, am I dissatisfied with my life because of where I want to get is so much work? And then we realize that everything in our life really is showing us how we feel about ourselves. And when we get upset at people, when people don't listen to us, when people aren't taking us seriously, and then we start to get frustrated at them, and then we realize, wait a minute, I don't take myself seriously because I am continuing to eat these processed snacks. And every day I tell myself I don't want to eat these snacks, but I'm continuing to eat them. I realize that, like, I'm mad at the world for decisions I'm making in my own life. And then we kind of get into these circles. And so, yeah, it's going to take a long time. But it's not like, what else are you doing?
Mm.
You know, this is your life. And this
Mhm.
is a place to explore. And as you have these experiences and as you have these feelings, you recognize that, like, where you're putting a lot of attention, and then recognize that, I wonder how I might be able to see this with indifference, or I wonder how I might be able to allow myself this space and still love me. You know, like, oftentimes I've seen parents who they love their children way more than they love themselves,
Yeah.
because their children are these things that they can do better somehow. And it's like, well, you know, that then gets you overly involved in your children's lives and makes you this sort of secondary character to your own life.
Yeah. It's hard though, isn't it? Because you want to, as you go through life, you recognise the pitfalls, the problems, the pressures. You want to protect them from those where you can, the harms that you feel like you've done yourself or you've experienced yourself. And yet you're a flawed person. You're always a flawed person,
Right.
from the very beginning to even when you feel like you've learnt from some burns. You still continue to act with flaws.
Yeah. You know, that's why I talk to people about the difference between the word learned and taught. If it's easy for you to say, I was taught how to have bad relationships by my parents, then it will be hard for you to change that lesson in your life. But if you say, I learned to have bad relationships by watching my parents, you realize that the teacher was you, and you know you're flawed. The problem is that when you say, I was taught, you were usually taught by someone you don't believe had flaws.
Mm.
Your parents, your teachers. And so you don't want to give up that information that you were taught. You're constantly having to reimagine things that you've learned in your life. Constantly. Because they don't add up. But if you settle on an idea, you're becoming rigid. And once you become rigid and unmovable to a certain idea, well, you're going to break. The idea is to bend and sway and change and move as the wind blows. And, you know, sometimes it's important to, you know, you don't want to send your children into, like, anything that's going to cause them any danger. But I don't care how good of a parent you are, you're not going to protect your child from every danger.
No, it's impossible.
Right. It's impossible. You know, people love wanting to stop things, like, let's stop domestic violence. It's like, good luck with that. What are you going to just post somebody into everybody's home to make sure that stops? It's not that I want that to continue, but it's like, you have to recognize where your limits are. We have to recognize how much influence we actually don't have on the world. And you can't protect your child from everything, but you can love your child through everything. And that's going to be more important than protection. Because that's going to teach your child how to love themselves. You know, you and I were, I mean, part of the whole Gen X sort of thing, and we were left to our own devices a lot as children.
Hmm.
And by that being the case, we were influenced very much by our surroundings. And we had to get along with people. And our parents didn't want to deal with us getting taken to jail. Our parents didn't want to have to deal with things that we put ourselves in, positions we put ourselves in, and we were a burden to them because they were out trying to make money and do all the things that they were trying to do. And so we have this idea that that's our job, but we didn't really understand love in deep sort of like ways that we're learning how to love today. You know, because you know, we're just consciously, we're different beings than our parents were. And so there's all of this ways of loving in the world. And we have to realize how to give that to ourselves without having to prove ourselves, without having to be something other than what we are. We don't have to care so much because we don't. But sometimes we pretend as if we do.
Hmm.
There's a lot to think about here.
Hmm.
Well,
Oh,
I really appreciate you coming up and chatting with me.
thank you.
Absolutely. I am going to be signing off shortly, but I come up and do Tao of the Day. Are you familiar with the Tao Te Ching?
No, not at all.
Not at all. It's an ancient text. It has 81 chapters, like the one that we read, number 13. And yeah, it's just, it helps us live a more reasonable life. That's kind of how I express it. And that means like not asking the world to change to appease us, but we live our lives in a way that is flexible with the world around us and with what other people and the world has to offer.
Thank you. I'll pop back.
All right. Thank you so much, Fanny.
Have a good day.
It was wonderful chatting with you. You too.
Cheers.
Okay. That was Fanny, and we chatted with all about number 13, and so much is here in the Tao Te Ching. There's so much to engage with. There's so much to think about. And there were moments there with Fanny where we were able to just be quiet. And, you know, like when we were quiet, I was able to just put my hand on my chest and just hold Fanny for a moment. You know, just hold that space and allow that space to do the work that it needs to do, to be indifference about the emptiness, to not have to fill it. And then there were moments where I was like, okay, now I can speak. Right? It just feels like, oh, a door has opened in the silence. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off because I got to pick someone up from the airport. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Fanny, thank you so much for sharing and engaging with me and with the Tao. This is the Tao Te Ching, again, 600 BCE it was written. I recently wrote a rendition. That's what we read from. And you can find that on my website, martinjohn.com. It's in my profile if you're interested in picking that up. Other than that, I'll be doing Tao of the Day, you know, as I feel like doing them. I don't know when they'll come and go, but I did it today, and I did it all week this week. So that was enjoyable. I appreciate you guys listening and following the Tao. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.